And the role players have mostly fit in. I mean, I don't think there's anyone on this team. The funny thing is, I think we were both worried that their supporting cast was going to be terrible. And you know what, Jason? Outside of their centers, the supporting cast has pretty much been about as good as we would have expected. None of them have been like otherworldly. Kyle Kuzma's been worse than I think we would have expected. So it's sort of weird because it's almost like you and me predicted this team correctly outside of Dwight Howard, who's really kind of come back to earth after an unbelievable start. And yet it just doesn't matter because LeBron and Davis are just that good.
Yeah. Actually, I want to mention something about Dwight Howard quickly. There was a game recently where he did not take a shot, and he was asked about it afterwards, and he said, well, I'm not here to take shots. That just shows that Howard has grown and matured because much like Carmelo, Dwight Howard is on the outside looking in of the NBA. And for him to come back the way that he does with a team that he left on not the best of terms a few years ago, and to be able to come back and play well and kind of re-endear himself to that fan base is really nice to see. But you know what I call that, Ben? I call that the LeBron James fear factor, because you saw what playing with LeBron has done to the psyches of a few guys, Chris Bosh and Kevin Love, to name a couple. But there is an immense pressure that comes with playing with LeBron James that you don't see with Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis, Steph Curry. It's really just like the LeBron factor. Anthony Davis was handpicked by LeBron to be his running mate as he gets one last shot at getting more than 3 championship rings. And all these guys are buying in, which is why I think the supporting cast of the Lakers are exceeding expectations. But like we said on last week's show, Ben, the schedule is about to get much harder. You saw them lose on Sunday to the Dallas Mavericks. They're currently playing at Denver in the first quarter there. So the schedule is going to tighten up, and I think we'll see by the time we record next where the Lakers really stand. And I'm going to predict a slight stumble. I think the next time we do a show, they will not be the top team in the Western Conference, at least when it comes to the record.
Well, I mean, you've got to wonder just can they really keep this up if the role players continue to just, I mean, really underachieve? I mean, Kyle Kuzma is the only Laker who's scoring in double figures for this team outside of LeBron and Davis. And he's only got 11 points a game, Jason. I mean, he's been back for a while. He has not looked great. Honestly, we've seen Dwight Howard regress a little bit already. He had a really torrid start to the season, and he has kind of come back to earth. And then, I don't know. I mean, I think you've got to wonder if teams are going to start game planning a little differently here and really, really just focusing all of their attention on those two guys and really making other guys beat them. Now, the one thing the Lakers did that was smart, Jason, in the offseason, they decided to get shooting. So you look at the guys on this team, the guys who surround Davis and James are either rim running centers or shooters. And that is huge. Anytime Rajon Rondo is not in the game, they have shooters around the two of those stars. And when they put Davis at the 5, oh my goodness, Jason. I mean, when you have the LeBron James Davis pick and roll with 3 shooters around it, I mean, that's absolutely deadly. But the dirty little secret here is that there's only a few guys who've really been shooting well from 3. One of those guys is Rajon Rondo, which, I mean, let's be honest, that's really not going to keep up. Um, and really, the other guys who are playing any minutes who are shooting well are Danny Green, who's going to shoot freaking 40% from 3 until he dies, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is actually having a decent season for them. So I'm interested to see if teams start forcing guys like that to make a little bit more plays for this team, and they stop letting Davis and James just dominate, because we just haven't seen it yet, Jason. And it's a little surprising, given how good those two are, that teams haven't done more to take them away, I think.
Yeah, that remains to be seen. We'll see what happens when their schedule tightens up, as it is starting to. Big test tonight on the road in Denver, and then we'll see how they fare the rest of the month of December. But one more team before we move on that I wanted to touch on are the Utah Jazz. Losers of 2 straight. They just don't look right. Okay, they had a very lopsided Eastern Conference road trip where they were blown out a couple of times and really just don't look like the title contender that everyone was pegging them to be coming into the early portion of the season. So what are your thoughts on the Jazz? I mean, is there reason to panic, or do you think it's just a little bit of a slide?
Well, I think if there's reason to panic, I'll give you one reason to panic if you're a Jazz fan. Mike Conley looks washed. I don't know what happened to Mike Conley, but he has just looked old. It looks like he's aged 10 years in a single season because he's getting his shots blocked. He's shooting 36.9% from the field, Jason. Newsflash, that's not good. When you have two of your major rotation players shooting under 40%, him and Jeff Green both have that ignominious honor. That is not a good sign. And meanwhile, Joe Ingles is the third one who's actually doing this, who's shooting 36%. So it's been pretty brutal. I think if there's reason for optimism, it's that those guys are proven guys. Joe Ingles, Jeff Green, Mike Conley, they're not going to shoot under 40% for the whole season. I mean, Conley's never been a phenomenal shooting percentage guy, but he's going to come back up. Donovan Mitchell is shooting a low percentage too. I think if those guys start hitting some shots, this is always a second half team, and they're actually off to a better start than they have been in recent memory. So I think it's okay to be a little worried, but at the same time, I'm not ready to hit the panic button. I think they're a team that can come on strong, and that defense has been phenomenal. I have been, if you want to talk about something that has surprised me, Jason, one of my biggest surprises of the season is just how good the Jazz defense has been, in spite of the fact that it's really four below average defenders around Rudy Gobert. If he doesn't get the Defensive Player of the Year this year, it's an absolute travesty because the work he's doing on the back end of that defense is unbelievable. He's playing 34 minutes a game. He's just anchoring the paint for them. He is incredible, and if he keeps doing that, I think the worm is going to turn for this team because shots are going to just start falling. And when you play defense like that, it just gets you easy opportunities in transition. So I really do think that this is a team that's going to turn it around as the season progresses.
Let's hope so. So one thing I said to Ben before the show is that, we've been talking about a lot of the same teams, and rightfully so. The Bucks, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Trailblazers. Obviously, we talk about our Nets and Bulls every week. We never forget to throw some shade in the direction of the New York Knicks. But what I wanted to do in this next segment is I wanted each of us to pick a team that hasn't really gotten much buzz in the media so far this season, including from us. And since I am a gentleman of epic proportions, I will start with you, my dear friend. What team has not gotten that much buzz in the media so far that deserves a little bit more discussion?
Oh, this is easy. Denver Nuggets. This is the forgotten team. People are bored with them. And frankly, it's probably because they look bored. There's not a team with worse body language that is playing as well as they are. They just don't look like they're enjoying it. Jokic has looked out of shape, out of sorts, not like himself. It has not been a great season for him. And honestly, there's been just nothing. No one has jumped out. I mean, Jamal Murray didn't take the leap that some people projected. Jokic took a step back. Paul Millsap is just steady old Paul Millsap. Jeremy Grant is doing same old Jeremy Grant things. While they're exciting, they're not new to people. So I get it. I get why this team's not getting any pub. But here's something else, Jason. This is a team that right now is leading their division, and right now they're just behind the Lakers. They've only got 4 losses on the season. Now, mind you, they've played fewer games than the Lakers, but they are only 2.5 back of the Lakers in spite of the fact that they really have not played great basketball. So they have to be thrilled to be where they are, given how poorly they've played. And one of the main reasons is their defense has been dramatically better than it was a season ago. The addition of Jeremy Grant has really made a difference for them, and it's allowed them, and I think this is crucial, Jason, and if you were someone who was a believer, I personally was not, but if you were someone who believed in this team as a title contender, you have to be really encouraged by the fact that they've played really below their standard on offense, and they're still so successful because their defense has been so stingy and really kept other teams below their normal number of points. So I think big kudos to this Nuggets team and Malone for kind of keeping it together in spite of a really slow and lethargic start.
Do you think it's a market issue? I know Denver's a big city, but in national terms, it's considered a small market, at least for sports, which is surprising because you have the Broncos there, have won a Super Bowl in the last 5 years. You have the Rockies there who've played in the World Series. You have the Avalanche who have been a playoff team in the NHL. And then you have the Nuggets, a team that, with Carmelo Anthony was in the Western Conference Finals, 10 or so years ago. And then you have this young, hungry, homegrown team, a good head coach, a bona fide superstar in Jokic, and they're not talked about as much. But I think what you said was good about them. I like where they're going. I would love to see, if you want to stay on the line with me for the next 2.5 hours to see if they beat the Lakers, and then we can kind of close the door on this segment of the podcast. But I mean, I think they're going to be right there. But I'm wondering, do you think it's the market?
I think it's partially the market. Playing on the West Coast is really tough. It means your games come on really late in general. I think the biggest thing is that they don't have a traditional superstar. As much as everyone likes Jokic, he's just not your standard type superstar. He doesn't jump off the page when you watch their games. He doesn't just come out of the TV at you. He's subtle in the way that he affects the game, and he frankly hasn't really been all that great this season. So I think that's made it really tough. I think for non-basketball fans, people who aren't just fans of watching any old team, they just like good basketball. I think this is a tough team sometimes because they're very egalitarian on offense, and honestly, that offense hasn't been all that great. So it hasn't even been what we typically expect from this Nuggets team where they're running up and down. They've been a lot slower and a lot more methodical, and they've honestly just been bricking a lot more shots. They don't have a single player on there. You mentioned my player efficiency rating. They don't have a single player with a player efficiency rating over 20 this season as of yet, and it speaks to the fact that they've really struggled. Jokic is shooting a ghastly percentage from three. None of the guys on their team have really been all that great, so I think that's a big part of it. You're right, though, the market doesn't help, and being on the West Coast in general is always a little bit of a tough sell unless you're a really, really big market team like the Lakers or the Warriors.
Yeah, they definitely have their work cut out for them, but I think they'll be right there. They're a well-coached team, and
Well,
we have them on this list for the right reasons. But my choice for this segment is on this list for the complete wrong reason, and that's the Detroit Pistons. Okay, I mean, can you remember a time in our 2+ years doing this podcast where we've talked about the Pistons in depth?
Detroit basketball. Sorry. Uh, I went to a Detroit Pistons game. I think that's the only time we talked about
I mean, that really says something because I know they're in a small market and Detroit's not really the most glamorous city when you talk about an NBA market, and it's tough for them to get players to go there, although they did get your boy Derrick Rose. And I'm looking at their roster, and I really do think it's a nice roster. Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond, Luke Kennard, Derrick Rose, Markieff Morris, Langston Galloway, Tony Snell, Reggie Jackson, Thon Maker, Tim Frazier. I mean, those are all guys that have proven themselves in this league. Now, I know they've been riddled by injuries. Blake Griffin's played in 8 games. Reggie Jackson has only played in 2. Derrick Rose has played in 15. Only a handful of guys have been in every game. But right now, the Pistons are just 8-13. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what is wrong with them. Is it the fit of the team not really working out? Do you think it's injuries? Because the Pistons fancy themselves a playoff team. I don't see it happening. And if they don't get things together within the next month or so, they may wind up having to become sellers when it comes to trade season. And I just find that hard to believe because their roster, at least on paper, looks pretty damn good, especially in the East. But I don't know if it's a chemistry issue or a health issue. I mean, what do you make of the Pistons?
It's a great question. There's a couple guys I like on this team, but yeah, I think overall to struggle. That said, they just smacked the Cavaliers tonight, and if you look, you can see that one of the big reasons was that Blake Griffin went off in the first quarter, and he had 24 points in the game, which doesn't sound like a lot, but he scored a good chunk of those in the first quarter and kind of put the team on his back. And then by the end of the first half, they were just running away with it. And that's what the Pistons need. They need Blake Griffin to be Blake Griffin. And if he can do that and do what he did in this game, I mean, that's really the key for this team to turn it around is they need Blake Griffin to be a star. The problem is Blake Griffin is injury prone, Jason. He cannot be playing the type of minutes he played a season ago. And he's also 30 years old. He's turning 31 during the season, which isn't old for some players, but he has a lot of tread on those tires. So I think that puts them in a really weird position this year. And I agree with you. In a sense, you wonder if the Pistons might not just be better off selling and kind of, I'm not going to say tanking, but if they were to play the odds towards